Guys, welcome back to part 2 of going through this document here. This is the document that came out just a couple of days ago. It is Microsoft's response to the CMA questions in regards to remedies. And we've gone through the first part, which was about the console market. So go check out that video if you haven't. And this part is going to be about the cloud gaming remedy. We already know all the stuff Microsoft is planning to do with cloud gaming, which is offering 10-year deals to pretty much any cloud gaming platform out there that wants a 10-year deal for Call of Duty or for the Activision Blizzard games. And they go over all of this. So we'll just jump right into this here. They say here, in response to the panel's questions, Microsoft has significantly expanded access to the eligible games. The proposed remedy is now a royalty-free worldwide license, which is generally available to consumers and cloud gaming providers. The streaming right granted to consumers in respect of the eligible games is therefore portable in the sense that it can be used to access the game which the consumer has acquired on any eligible streaming service or more than one eligible streaming service. So big thing there, which I think is going to make the CMA, is going to make these regulatory bodies happy. Like, it's going to ease their concerns. It's a royalty-free worldwide license. They're offering it out to anybody, and it's portable no matter what streaming service that you are on. So if you're on, let's say, Boostroid, who they made a deal with, and you go to GeForce Now, if you purchased Call of Duty or the other Activision games that are going to be on there, you're still going to be able to stream those games. You're still going to be able to get those over and play them on any streaming service that you want, which is a great thing. It's royalty-free. Like, everyone is getting access to Call of Duty. That's one of the biggest things here. Everyone's getting access to all of these Activision Blizzard games, no matter where they're playing. And that's one of the main things for these remedies that Microsoft is trying to push that point home to the regulators, that they aren't trying to reduce access to these games. And then they go on here. It's unfortunate that this entire part is redacted. But as we know, they did say Call of Duty, and then they said Activision catalog. And we don't know exactly what they mean specifically of all of the Activision catalog games, and they're all listed here: eligible franchise and eligible title and release year. I don't know why they would have redacted this, but I guess they still want everybody to know which games they are going to be making available. But all of the titles that they are going to be making available across all these different platforms, and you can take it wherever you go, were all listed there. Now, in terms of the term, they talk about it being the 10-year term and how they've never seen this. This is an unprecedented term. And they even go over all of the other deals, the same thing that they did with the console segment part, that have had long terms, but not 10-year terms, which again pushes home that point that this is a deal that these companies want to accept. They know that this deal is going to help them in the long run, because they're going to be able to continuously still make money off of these games, even though they're going to be paying a certain percentage whenever somebody buys one of these games. Like if you're PlayStation specifically, I mean, one of the things here that they do say, which really takes away any risk from these streaming providers, is that it's royalty free. So they're not having to actually pay anything to Microsoft if somebody's streaming Call of Duty through NVIDIA GeForce Now or through Boostroid. But like for PlayStation, for example, if they buy Call of Duty on the PlayStation Store, they're obviously having to pay a royalty for that. Or if they buy Call of Duty via Steam, obviously a royalty will be paid for that. But overall, these streaming companies, they have nothing to lose by signing these deals, because they're just getting people who have purchased the games to know that they can go to that specific streaming service and still play it. Now, here it says in 3.4, Activision PC games consistently account for less than a percentage of the revenues from PC game publishing, both in the UK and worldwide. And the parties do not accept that Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, or any other Activision title plays an important role in shaping downstream competition in cloud gaming at present, given that these titles are not licensed for the cloud gaming in the UK. So specifically right now, if this deal goes through, it is better for cloud gaming providers. It is better for the gamers there, because right now they aren't licensed for these cloud gaming services. And they also say that Call of Duty and WoW are already 20 years old, and once this deal's over, they'll be 30 years old. And they say that, however, even on the CMA's reasoning, it is important to recognize that the key Activision PC games identified in the CMA are 20 and 30 years old, meaning that they're already well-established franchises that people are still going to, right now, they see that they're able to play these games via one of these streaming services. They're going to go out and there's a high chance that they're going to bring that game over to that streaming services that they currently own, which currently isn't available. So this deal has to go through, it seems like, for this to happen. I mean, Activision could license these games out to all of these streaming services, but they haven't done it. So why would they do it now? Now, again, they talk about the deals. Then they go on here to the consumer license, and it says Activision grants end user licenses to consumers who purchased its PC games, which are available online. For example, the Blizzard end user license agreement is available here. The consumer license are currently subject to certain limitations, which prevent the use of a game in connection with a cloud gaming service. So that's huge. Right now, with Blizzard, if there is a clause in there that is actually preventing these games from being more accessible across these different streaming platforms. And with this deal, if it does get approved, if the CMA looks at this and they're reading this right now, I mean, they've read this, they know the arguments. Their argument which they made, which was that potentially, if this deal goes through, Microsoft could withhold these games from competitors. They would withhold these games from other cloud gaming services so that Xbox Cloud Gaming and Game Pass grow, and then they can go ahead and foreclose the competition. Currently, right now, if they block this deal, they are saying we are okay with Activision Blizzard being able to withhold these games from other cloud streaming services. That's okay with us, but as long as right now, I guess PlayStation, as is the main opponent of the deal, is protected, we would rather have that, because if this deal goes through, clearly they're saying they're going to change that end user license agreement. They're going to make sure that these games are available on these streaming services. It even says Microsoft commits to unilaterally amend the consumer license to give consumers the right to play eligible games on eligible streaming services, regardless of whether the consumer license was obtained prior or after the merger. So even if you've already bought the game, you're going to get that license to bring it to whatever streaming service you want. It is portable. You get to bring it from NVIDIA GeForce Now, then you can move it to Boosteroid, to Ubitus, to whatever streaming services launch in the future, or whatever bring your own game services that are available. You're going to be able to bring that license over. Now, eligible streaming services, again, they're just pretty much saying the same thing. Worldwide, royalty-free license available to cloud gaming providers. And then they go on here and say, the consumer license may be acquired from the cloud streaming provider itself or from a third-party game store. There's no restriction on how the consumer license is paid for by the consumer. Example, the consumer may pay for the license by the means of an upfront purchase, subscription, free-to-play, freemium, or other basis. So that's another thing. That's a positive. It isn't going to be like you have to purchase it specifically through this third-party store, like Steam or whatever, to be able to use it on these other streaming services. No matter where you get Call of Duty from, no matter where you get whether Activision titles are going to be in this agreement, you're going to be able to take those games and play it on the other streaming services out there. 3.9, they say to be eligible for a license, the cloud gaming provider must be permitted by an authorized PC game store to provide access to eligible games, offer access to eligible games through applications which do not require integration with the authorized PC game store. And an authorized PC game store is defined as a first-party or third-party PC game store that distributes the eligible games post-closing. No further conditions will be imposed. So one of the interesting things, I wonder if it will work, and it seems like it will be, because I don't believe that these companies are doing anything illegal, but it's those companies that buy those keys in bulk and then resell them for a cheaper price. Like there's a bunch of companies out there, but like even like GOG or whatever, Green Man Gaming, I think that's another one. All of those companies there, if you are buying a CD key, like a Steam key through them, is that going to work? And I'm assuming yes, it will work because you're putting it into the Steam platform or whatever platform you're buying it for. Now, they define two things here. They define the first limb and the second limb. And this is pretty much how they are like defining this distribution of these games. So the first limb means that any cloud gaming provider which distributes eligible games or has an agreement with a first or third party game store that distributes eligible games will automatically be entitled to stream the eligible games. I mean, this is pretty much all the same stuff that they're saying. And then they're also saying here that a second limb means any cloud gaming provider which does not require integration with an authorized PC store, for example, GeForce Now, Boosteroid, all of these streaming services, to bring your own game stuff pretty much. That they just give you that cloud technology, but you bring your game from Steam or from Epic Game Store or whatever. Those are all going to be included in this entire deal. And they say, similarly, GeForce Now has previously provided access to Battle.net in this way during a limited free beta trial version of the service, as there is no requirement for the cloud gaming provider to have a minimum number of users or revenue or to stream games from any other publisher. There is also no risk of providers losing their status because they fall below a minimum threshold. And then we go on here and we move down, because this part here is a lot of just redacted info and nothing too interesting, nothing really more to know that they mentioned. But in 3.15, the business model of cloud gaming providers, it says that this proposed remedy is open as it grants a royalty-free license to cloud gaming providers in all circumstances in which the consumer already owns the entitlement to the game. And then there is a redacted section. The proposed remedy applies irrespective of whether the consumer obtains that entitlement from the cloud gaming provider itself, so buy to play, free to play, or freemium model, or from a third-party digital PC game store via a buy your own game model. So I would assume third-party digital PC game stores, any online digital PC store that has these codes and that they do sell them. So no matter where you're getting it from. So people go to those other sites because they're cheaper, right? Cheaper than where you can get these codes on Steam. So I'm assuming that's what that means, or you can bring those games over to any streaming service and still be able to play them. And they say Microsoft has gone further and included in its remedy all business models which do not give rise to the risk of cannibalization. Not only is the proposed remedy open, it addresses the CMA's provisional findings that Activision's content is especially likely to become available on cloud gaming services under a buy-to-play or a BYOG approach. So CMA was arguing that one of the reasons that there needs to be remedies for this deal to go through is because in the future, Activision will bring their games over to cloud streaming models, cloud streaming providers. I mean, there's no proof of that. They haven't done it. They haven't brought Call of Duty. So they're assuming that they will as cloud gaming takes off. Maybe they would have built their own cloud gaming service, all of those types of things. And Microsoft is saying with their response is that that concern now is squashed because we are literally giving these games to any cloud gaming provider out there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who they are. If they want that royalty-free license, if the bring your own game providers out there, they want all their users to be able to play Call of Duty and Activision games, they are going to be able to do that. So in the future, competition pops up, they're going to get access to those games. They're not going to be held back by not being able to tell their customers they can't play Call of Duty on their service. So they're pretty much squashing all of those concerns from the CMA. And they say, as set out below, the CMA finds no evidence that in the counterfactual, Activision's games would have been made available on cloud gaming services with a multi-game subscription model. And again, that's a great point. They're assuming that they would have brought them, but maybe they would never have brought them, depending on Activision wants to do their business. And this deal guarantees that these games are coming over to these streaming providers. Then they go on here and say the CMA concludes that this is more likely for cloud gaming services, which does not have an MGS-based model, which is a multi-game subscription service model, like Game Pass, like PlayStation Plus. The CMA further notes that this would be more likely the case for cloud gaming rivals, which have or will have in the future BYOG or buy-to-play business models, either standalone or in combination with an MGS model, rather than just an MGS-based model. And then they say, primarily on the importance of this content for rivals who have or likely have or to have a BYOG or buy-to-play business model. And the CMA refers to the evidence that multi-game subscription-based cloud gaming platforms are, and notes that this would further increase Activision's incentive to add content to those platforms, as it would not lead to any cannibalization. And finally, having concluded that absent the merger, Activision's content is likely to become available on cloud gaming services using a buy-to-play or a BYOG model, the CMA concludes that the immediate effects would be felt most strongly by players such as Nvidia and Amazon. So pretty much what they did there is they listed 5 of their complaints or 5 of their issues, I want to say, for why they believe this deal could be anti-competitive. And with this proposal here, 3.16, they're just squashing all of those issues. Like, there's no way that the CMA could look at this and still think that these are problems going forward, when they're saying they are going to give this game royalty free to any providers out there, to any, change the end user license agreement so that users can take these games if they've bought and choose which cloud streaming service they want to play these games on. Then we get down here to 3.18, and they're going over some of the these sections in the remedies notice, and they go, as set out in Microsoft's response to the remedies notice, section 36.2 Enterprise Act 2002 provides that the CMA is to decide whether action should be taken for the purpose of remedying, mitigating, or preventing the significant lessening of competition. The requirements of section 36.2 are also qualified by section 36.3 to the effect that the CMA shall have regard to achieving as comprehensive solution to the significant lessening of competition and any adverse effects arising as is reasonable and practical. Then the obligation to have regard to a condition or requirement is an obligation to fulfill the requirement. Any such considerations is of a solution which is both reasonable and practical. The proposed remedy is a reasonable and practical solution which addresses the significant lessening of competition provisionally identified by the CMA in cloud gaming. It provides a self-executing remedy for free to consumers and the cloud gaming business models that account for over, and they give a redacted percentage of revenues from PC gaming. So they're saying here, based off of their own acts, based off of the Enterprise Act, the CMA has to make sure that if they are asking for remedies, that it is to prevent the significant lessening of competition, and the adverse effects of blocking of this deal going through have to be greater than if they do block this deal, which obviously won't be the case. If they block this deal, I think the effects will be worse than more positive, and that all of the conditions that Microsoft has answered to are actually reasonable and practical, and that they have made sure that there will not be any significant lessening of competition. And by blocking this deal, they aren't remedying or mitigating or preventing any of those things that will be anti-competitive. And then it just ends off here, and they just, again, talk about the eligible games. They're all going to be available day and date on all of these services. There isn't going to be a lack of parity for any of the releases of these games when it comes to their release date. And if you're streaming these games, there isn't going to be a lack of parity in the features and the game itself. It's going to be the same game you bought on the platform that has the parity version across on Xbox and on PlayStation. So that is the responses to the cloud gaming section for Microsoft to the CMA. And I think objectively, I don't care what platform you play on, you read through this, and if you can't sit there and think that this is better for video games, this is better for the gamers and the industry, where they're literally giving these games and making sure that they are distributed everywhere, whereas currently right now that isn't the case, as Activision doesn't put their games on these streaming services. I don't know what to tell you, because I think this completely squashes any issues that they may have with this deal and making Xbox and Microsoft a monopolistic company within cloud gaming. But I'm going to leave that there, guys. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up. If you're new, hit that subscribe, and stay tuned for the next part where we go over the enforcement side, where they talk about making sure that they can actually enforce these commitments that they have made. I'll catch you guys in the next video.